Hello everyone, greetings. Hope everyone is well. This video we are going to talk about the phalanx in chess. All right, and it's a way to maneuver the pawns. So I'm going to explain what the phalanx is. Some people pronounce it flanks, but it's pronounced phalanx. Okay, and what is a phalanx? A phalanx is usually a body of troops, right? It comes from military strategy and was associated with the Greeks. But of course, military history shows that it was used by other cultures as well, Sumerians, Egyptians. But it's basically a body of troops or officers moving in close formation. The Greeks used a closely tight packed rectangle formation. And what they did is when they fought other armies, they advanced slowly together, okay, until they and kept their shields tightly pressed together in order to keep from being penetrated by arrows and such until they got to the enemy ranks. And basically, this formation was kind of like a human battering ram. And the strength in the formation was all based on the ability of those members of the phalanx to stay together. So it consisted of highly disciplined and trained men. If the flanks was, the phalanx was consisted of guys that weren't disciplined. As soon as the phalanx came under fire, so to speak, guys would start running away, and you would have what you would call broken ranks. And once the ranks broke up, then it'd be easy to pick off the individual um, soldiers. So there's a same strategy, right, that can be applied to chess, and we're gonna look at a few games. So let's go into it. And this strategy involves the movement of the pawns. Some of you know what I'm talking about, and some of you don't. But enjoy the ride here. This first game, these are all Grandmaster games. I don't have these labeled. I just grabbed these out of my library real quick, and I have them printed out on white paper. That's how old school I am. I had I have from years ago. Just believe me, too much information. But anyway, so e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. Again, the opening is not relevant, so we're not even going to discuss that. Bishop c4. I will mention that this is two knights defense. Knight g5. Okay, this is all theory. d5, e takes d5, knight a5, d3. That's one of the lines that's possible. h6, hitting the knight drops back, and e4. This has all been seen before. The idea is to undermine the support of this bishop here. Okay, so what would you do? There's different moves that can be played here, but in this game, and to illustrate our purpose of the phalanx, white sacrificed a piece, and he just took. D takes e4, and we're not going to address if it was sound or not and all of that. This is how this game went. Knight takes c4. Queen d4 was played. Okay, so now just to count up the cost, white is down a piece, but has a mobile pawn center and has all of his pawns. So it's basically two pawns for the piece at this point, material wise. And white has full control over the center. Now, is it enough? So knight b6, c4, and c5. Now, we see the strategy now of the phalanx is white wants to basically slowly but methodically blow black and push black off the board. So therefore, although he has the choice of playing en passant right here, he's not going to do that. He's not going to play a move like D takes c6 here. He just moves his queen back. d3. Black play bishop g4. Knight bd2. Bishop e7. Castle. Castle. Knight e5. attacking the bishop and also planning the move of the f pawn. Bishop here, b3, knight b, d7, attacking the knight. Bishop comes here, knight takes, bishop takes, knight d7, bishop comes back, and black feels like, hey, I'm up a piece, why not trade? So he's not respecting the power of these pawns, the unified pawns, the phalanx. Rook a e1, another trade, and black is hell-bent on trading here. So he does that, and of course, pawn moves. Queen f5, f4. So now you see what we mean by the phalanx. You see how these pawns are just methodically moving up the board, taking more and more space. So phalanx in chess, the phalanx is like a space gaining, or is a space gaining strategy. All right. So f4 is played. Bishop g6, knight e4, and we see that although white is a piece down, that his space is compensation for that piece. All right, space is one of the elements in chess. Space is a compensation. Rook a b8, queen f3. Now preparing g4. Bishop goes back, g4. Queen g6. Can you guess the next move? You got it, f5. Queen b6. And now the queen just goes here to protect e5. f6. Now, again, does he take? Nope. Continues along with this strategy, willing to give up this square. Knight e5. And he's not worried about this square because if white needs to, he can always get this piece out of there. If he wants to reroute his knight to f3 or d3 at some point, or even consider giving up the exchange. So that knight is not a problem. Knight e4, h4, right? There's the break. King h8, g5, rook bc8, king h1, queen to d8, g6. Look at that, just imposes his will on the black pieces. F takes g6, b5, and at this point, it's a little too late. d6, queen b6, d7. I'm sorry, that was e7. d7. Finally, now it is black giving up an extra piece. E takes d7. Rook c d8. And of course, black is totally busted. Black has been busted for a while, but before at least he had the extra material. Now he's lost the material. First thing that fell was his position, and then the material fell. Knight takes f6 is played. This is just brutal. Of course, that can't be played because this pawn will go to g7. Queen c6, and then queen g2, and black had enough. Okay, so we got that game out of the way, and so now you know the theme of this video. Okay, the phalanx, very powerful tool in chess. Let's look at another one. Voila, Dutch defense. Knight f3, knight f6, g3, g6. This is the Leningrad variation. c4, castle, knight c3, d6. This is all normal. d5, c6, knight d4, one of many lines. attacking the e6 square. Queen b6. And with this, black has ideas of double attacking this knight on d4 with the timely knight e4. Castle, knight e4, knight takes e4, and now queen takes e4. Excuse me, queen takes d4. Sorry about the dog bark. All right, so queen takes d4. Bishop takes d4. Rook d1. c5. Now knight g5. Again, focusing on this a6 square. a5. This is all to slow down white's expansion over there on the queen side. Knight a6. a4. Now he just freely gives up this square, and black takes it. Knight b4. Game is pretty equal. Okay, at this point. Bishop d2. Bishop d7, attacking this pawn that's unprotected. Bishop takes b4. So white reckons that in this position that this bishop is not as valuable as the knight, because he seeks to close up the position. So b3, f4, g takes f4, and this is a positional sacrifice to enhance the scope of this bishop. Bishop comes here. And now e3 is played. If e4, then bishop c8, and then this pawn defense is precarious to say the least, if not impossible. So e3, and notice that in this position, white willingly parts with the rook. And you might say, why is he doing that? You get this a lot in the Dutch. But if you look at this particular position, again, we're not analyzing too much, but the position is closed. So the rooks aren't really, that effective in this type of position. Now, of course, if the position becomes open, it's a different story. But white has based his strategy, right? First giving up the dark square bishop for the knight, and then allowing his rook to be captured for a minor piece, because he does not, he's banking on the effectiveness of his remaining pieces, which is this knight right here. Remember, his strategy has been to dominate this e6 square. He has a light square bishop, which is the good bishop, right? He gave up his bad bishop. Not that it was bad, but it was, it was locked behind these pawns. They didn't have too many prospects. He got rid of that bishop. And normally you would like to trade the bishop for bishop. And that way black is weak on the dark squares. But however, he had a different idea in mind, different overall strategy in mind. So he gives up the exchange here. Let's see what happens. This bishop comes here, and now the knight goes to e6. Now, it's a general idea that in these type of positions, when the knight gets on the 6th rank, it's worth a rook. Rook f6. The bishop goes to e4. King f7. h4. Rook to b8. Check. And king g8. And again, I want to reiterate that the difficulty in making these rooks worth anything. It's very difficult in this position. Here, in this position, the knight is the dominating um, piece in the position. So after king g8, now the white king gets involved. Rook d1 is played. Rook h8. This is to free the king from the defense of this pawn. King h3, king f8 now. Rook to g1. King e8. So a lot of maneuvering going on. Rook g3. But it's white who can actually make progress, where black's rooks really are ineffective here. They really can't do anything. Black's best piece is his bishop, but it's just on this diagonal. It has a nice diagonal, but there's nothing on the diagonal. So it's like white performed kind of like a scorched earth policy, where he's giving black the diagonal, but there's nothing on it. All right, now after rook g3, h6, kicking the knight away. The knight jumps right back into e6. And one of the problems is this pawn right here right now. This right here would just be too much for black to handle, as this pawn and this pawn would be threatened at the same time. So black would be lost if he tried to give back the exchange at this point. So he plays g5. And white plays f5 here. G takes, king takes, h5, and now rook g6 by white. Black finds some employment for his bishop. Rook g2, now rook f, h6, bishop d3, b6. Again, note the poverty of the rooks. Knight f4, bishop c3. So the bishop is doing the best it can, which is not much. But again, there's no clear win for white either. So it's not like black is lost here. The thing is white has prospects, and that's the difference in the position. Is white has chances to improve and maneuver and things like that, where black is really zero prospects. So knight g6. And I have bishop f6 here. So hold on, I made a mistake. And that was the mistake right there. On move 35, instead of rook h6, this rook actually moves over. So I apologize for that. And now bishop d3, b6, knight f4, and bishop c3, and knight g6. So this guy was attacked, and now the bishop is able to come here. So now it makes sense. Bishop f6 check, king back, and now rook g8, moving out of the attack from the knight. f4. So now you're saying, hey, where's the phalanx? Okay, well, thanks for being patient. f4, h4, e4. I could have skipped to this position, but I wanted you to see how the game evolved and how we got there. Bishop d4, rook g4. So now we're looking at this h pawn and winning it. King f7. And now here it is, e5. Look at these pawns. Rook h5. Rook just dropped back to g2. rook h6, and now rook e2. Rook went to e8, and now we have f6 here. And here black couldn't take it anymore and decides to give back the exchange. But it doesn't do him any good. King h6. And now, devastating move here, f7. Just tying up the rook. Rook f8. e6. So again, now it looks like, well, how exactly is white gonna convert here? Yes, black is passively placed, but black still has an extra piece, and how is he going to do it? All the king has to do is come back here, guarding this square, and the bishop is guarding this square. So now what? This is where our phalanx comes in. So black plays the required move to guard the g8 square and king h7. And watch this, f5, right? Principles of Nimzovich, right? We want to attack the pawn chain at the base. Where's the base? The base is e7. But how can we do it? The bishop is here. Bishop f6, protecting the pawn and blockading the f pawn. So definitely looks difficult. Rook g6. Okay, now it becomes dangerous because rook takes rook takes f6 is threatened here. If white had another move, he would play rook takes f6. The base, right, of the pawn chain would be removed up to f6. This would allow the move e7, and then a rook could not stop both pawns at the same time. So that's the threat. So after rook g6, bishop g7 was played to get the bishop off of that square. And here's our phalanx. Very strong move. Can give up the whole rook. And e takes f6 was played, and white simply played rook g2, and black resigned. There's no stopping these ideas. So for example, if white had went e7 there, and this is still going to win. But why make it difficult? Instead he did that. And black was forced to resign. So again, you see the phalanx in action. The pawn space grabbing maneuver. Let's look at another one. d4, knight f6. c4, your favorite opening. The Benoni. Actually, it's like a King's Indian, like a variation of the King's Indian, not really a Benoni. So d6, knight c3, g6, e4, bishop g7, knight f3, castle, h3. So now, hopefully you're getting the point. Bishop d3, knight a6, bishop g5, knight c7, a4, just restricting the counterplay on the queen side. Queen e7, castle, h6, bishop drops back. e5, and now this kind of simplifies things a little bit, and white mainly has kind of like two choices. He can try to break over here, or do something over here on the king side. Um, let's see, move 12. White decided to gain some space over there. Sorry. Queen E8. Bishop C2. Trying to improve the prospects of the bishop or just trade it off. Knight D7. With the tried and true idea of F5. G4. Bishop A4 could have been played, of course. G4. Bishop F6. This is the bad bishop in this scenario. See how it's blocked up by the pawns? A lot of people make the mistake and are thirsty to trade it off. Bishop G3 was played, and now that's move 16. King G7, Queen D2, and as you can see, a lot of these games where the phalanx maneuver is incorporated or long games, since it involves, you know, this slow maneuvering of the troops or pawns, so to speak. All right, King G2, Rook H8, F4, Queen D8. So we see White has a space advantage here, and Black doesn't have too much counterplay going on. Here it is, B5, A takes, Knight takes, Knight E3, Knight to A6, H1, Knight B4, Bishop D1, Bishop D7. I'm trying to speed through this. Bishop E2, A5, G5, H takes, Bishop E7. And now here's where we get to the moment of truth and action. So we have this pawn here. We have these guys lined up, right? We have to combine the features, right? That's where our word comes from, combination, because we are combining features in the position. So we have these pawns in the dark squares, king and rook lined up, pawn on G5, okay, and boom. So for 2 pawns, we get to open up the position and release the power of these pawns. D takes E5, Bishop takes E5 check, which is worth the weight. Okay, so you got all of this going on. So the only move is F6 here, and I like this move right here, Bishop C3. See, that's like a grandmaster move right there. Just doesn't get thirsty and trade off everything. Nope, he leaves the pin. Bishop C3, Knight A4, and then again he gives up the exchange here. Now he didn't have to do that, right? He could have played this move, right? G takes F6, but then we wouldn't be talking about the phalanx here. Okay, we'll be talking about something else. And we got this exposed king. We'll be talking about a king hunt. Okay. But that was the strongest continuation there, actually. What happened is White gave up the exchange and played rook takes A4, which led to rook takes H1, king takes H1, bishop takes A4. And notice when you see those type of exchange sacrifices, the positions that are pretty much closed, where the rooks don't have, a lot of prospects. All right. So what happened next? Pinning and winning. Knight G4. Notice the pin. So just piling up on this square right here. Queen H8 check. King G1. The king gets out of the pin, but the queen is in the pin now. G takes F6. Bishop D6. E5, and now we see the phalanx, right? Brothers in arms marching up the board. Bishop C7. Queen E3. So he goes back to protect that pawn. E6. Right, it gets real dangerous now. And then Bishop D6 is trying to initiate some kind of blockade. But E7, and white resigned. So again, there's another example where you see the power of the phalanx. Okay. Now by themselves, and that's why that's why they call it a phalanx in chess, because it's the same as the military formation, the same concept. See, the pawns by themselves couldn't dominate the pieces like that, but when they're united and coordinated, they dominate the pieces. The chessboard, as you can see. Look at the queen. Queen is vanquished in the corner. The bishop, and the king, you know, and the amount of space white has. Okay, so the soldiers acting together and unified and in accord, able to do great things. All right, so I think you guys pretty much are getting have the point there. Let's look at one from the black perspective here, because I've been showing it just like from the white side. It doesn't matter, it's usually just standard, but let's look at it from the other way. This game started off D4, knight F6, C4, G6, knight C3, bishop G7, E4, D6. So we have a King's Indian here. It's classical variation. Again, this move is designed to halt or slow down the advance of white on the king side. Bishop G5, H6. Castles. Bishop D7. And what do we have here? Knight D2. Knight hops in. We see the other idea, A5, not only slowing down the advance of the queen side attacked by white, but also making sure the knight on C5 is secured. So now B4 is not possible. Has to be prepared if you want to kick this knight off that way. And then subsequently, there's a little bit more pressure placed on the E pawn. Okay, so let's keep it moving. B3, and of course this is the way you have to go about it. A3 and B4 to push that knight off. Now, surprise, 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 right in your eyes for white, right? You have all these pieces protecting this pawn, and now you're ready for the slow maneuver A3 and B4. Black takes chances. Black must have needed the win. Sorry, didn't do that. But he played this move. Surprise, surprise, right in your eyes. Bishop is attacked. Knight is attacked. And subsequently, the queen is attacked. Is this move sound? Not sure. Okay, we're not really talking about that. Really those things today. But we're talking about the phalanx. But it's a very interesting move. I think safer is play that first, that, and then perhaps do this. Right? That has a lot of juice to it. And you can see the concept. So once you understand the phalanx, then you see the opportunities. Right? Yes. You're dropping a piece. Right? But you're getting compensation. Then you play F4. F5. And you see the brothers in arms here. But what happened is that black played even more aggressively and didn't even play g5, but just went straight up. But knight f takes e4, bishop takes d8, knight takes c3, queen preserved itself with e1, and now rook f takes d8. Rook c1, attacking this guy. Can't really waste time retreating, so the attack continued. Knight takes a2, rook a1. Now he came back, so he stole another pawn and came back. Okay, so white basically has two minor pieces for the queen and 2 pawns, so the imbalance is crazy. And he's threatening knight here too. So this is a like crazy imbalance. You know, it's like enter at your own risk. And he has these pawns ready to march forward with this 4-3 pawn majority on the queen side. So let's go. So after knight b1, bishop d1, again to counter the threat on c2. e4, and black, like I said, black must have needed a win. Black is playing inspired here. Rook b1, and note the amount of time that black is gaining. Rook e8, 19, queen e3. And notice too, in these positions where you see these type of exchange sacrifices and these slow maneuvering strategies like the Phalanx, they take place in closed positions for the most part, because in order to play so slowly, you can't really have an open game and open files and things like that, you know. And the rooks really are ineffective also, right? The rooks aren't really that effective. It's hard. They have to wait until really like the ending where there's some type of open files. So these kind of strategies are an option. And, you know, they're more likely to occur, you know, in these scenarios. So at the queen e3, there it is. So you're familiar right now with the theme. You know, f5 and then h4. These moves are always double-edged when you're playing against the majority or something like that. For instance, white had played black had played a5 earlier to slow down the queenside advance of white. And here we see h4 being played with the same idea to slow down the kingside pawn advance of black here. The downside to that is that when you're playing on the same side as where your opponent is strong, usually that helps the opponent create a pass pawn over there. So it's like you want to slow them down, but at the same time, it has the flip side of you helping them out a little bit. So rook f8, g3. So you see he's using these pawns to stop black's pawn advance, but at the same time, he's weakened himself on the king side somewhat. The other rook comes in. King g2. Knight b d3. So look at all the compensation. You would think black had the queen, but it's white that has the queen. But again, with the position being so close, the queen is not really able to shine in the position. The queen or the rooks cannot really do anything. This knight is horrible, and this bishop is horrible. So all of white's pieces are bad in this position. Black's pieces are optimally placed. Rook g1, searching, right? Searching for the answer. f4, common theme in the Dutch is the busting open of the f file, and of course it's easy to see the f2 pawn vulnerable, right? You have the knight there with pressure on f2, so of course you want to open that up. G takes, rook takes, play h5, Black just kept things locked up with this move. Stronger was this move, rook e5. And of course, this threat remains. But he just kept things locked up with g5. Now rook f1. Rook h4. Rook h1. Okay, white wants to draw. Now rook ef8. f3. And now you can see how pushing those pawns helped Black's job a little easier. Help Black, help Black's strategy basically. So f3, rook h4. He played f takes e4. Bishop h3 is killer. Black played knight f4. King g1. Then he brought the other knight in. e5, which maybe this was better, right? But Black will still be better after rook takes h5. But after e5, I mean, knight takes e5. Now I like where this knight is, so I would, this bishop is kind of out of action right now, so I would have took with the bishop. Right, that looks and feels right to me because you bring in now all of the pieces involved. Whereas when you take with the knight, this bishop is still kind of out of the, out of things a little bit. But anyway, knight takes e5 was played. Rook c1. Okay. Attacking the queen. Now knight f3. g4, and this is just brutal. Knight takes. Oh, he's like, I'll give it back to queen. Black says, no, I'll take it. And this just ended in typical Dutch defense fashion when the Dutch goes right. This is why people get attracted to playing the Dutch defense. They see these type of games. But, where Black is just, just breaking down, beating down white. But, of course, all the games don't always go like that. All right. So that was kind of like that was like I wouldn't really call that a phalanx game though. That was just a beat down. We saw the pawns advancing, right? This is how you play the Dutch basically. But so we saw a little bit of pawn advance, but maybe like if I was to show this again, I'll leave that game out. I mean, it was a good game, but it's kind of like not, not like the other ones that I just showed you. All right. So I think we're gonna look at one more, right? Because you guys are smart out there, and I know you got the point, right, of the phalanx. Okay, so we're gonna look at one more. I'm gonna flip the board, and I'm just trying to see which one it is that I want to show you. Okay, we're gonna go here. We got d4, knight f6, again c4, e6, knight f3, and we have a Queen's Indian defense on the board. This is the Petrosian variation with a3. Real simple idea is to stop bishop b4, right? And the question is hey, can white really play a move like a3 and black not be able to equalize? Well, it's a very interesting opening, and some strong players from white, from Kasparov to Mamedyarov, have played this system with devastating results. So I would defer to them and say that this A3 system is very dangerous against the Queen's Indian. Knight C3, D5, C takes, E takes, all theory here, G3, Bishop D6, Bishop G2, Castle, Knight E5, Rook E8, Little tactics here. Knight c4. Notice the bishop on b7 is unprotected. So therefore, that's not happening. So bishop f8. Bishop g5. c6. Now the threat is on. He just hops right back in there. e5. h6. Parts with the bishop. Castle. Bishop d6. And white wants to keep this knight here. He plays f4, and he's willing to take on this weakness right here. Queen d8. e4. c5. Now the game starts getting pretty sharp. Queen h5. Threatening the f7 pawn. Rook f8. Now e takes d5. So white has won a pawn here, and then black has won a pawn. C takes d4. Okay, knight b5. Bishop a6. And remember what we said about the exchanges. Bishop a6 with the idea of pinning the knight to this rook right here. Again, in such positions, sometimes the rooks aren't, as effective. But here, white has a concrete continuation here. He plays knight takes d6. Queen takes d6. And now, simply rook fd1. So, of course, everybody wants to know what happens after knight takes d6 and then bishop takes f1. Well, the problem is again, tactics are king. You had 3 pieces on f7. So you can kind of guess what happens after that. Okay, now the queen is attacked. And let's say, for instance, queen e8. Rook takes f1. And then, I don't know, knight d7. Just for an example, knight d7. Knight takes h6. G takes queen g4, and then you're going to pick up this guy right here. I'm sorry, not king. Well, you could do king h7 and then just knight takes d7. So that's just a sample line just to show you what would have happened. So knight takes d6, and then the correct move, queen takes d6, was played here. Rook fd1. So now white has his pawn supported, whereas the black pawn is kind of, insecure. So f6 wants to kick the knight out, but the problem is you got this weakness here. Okay, with the f6, white just simply played rook ac1. Now, the strongest move here is just queen g6, and then you see that the pawn cannot capture the knight, because then he would capture the queen. And then play could have went, say, knight d7 and knight g4 with the threat of a move like h6 or something like that. Excuse me, knight takes h6. So, for example, knight c5, knight takes h6 check, king h8, knight f5, challenging the queen and threatening mate. Queen d7, d6. Again, threat, tactics. And white is just clearly winning. But, again, we wouldn't be talking about the phalanx if that's what happened. Instead, rook ac1 was played, f takes e5. So now you see the brothers in arms, right? So it doesn't have to be 4 pawns or 5 pawns marching up the board like those first 2 games, but just 2 pawns. But the whole idea of the phalanx formation is the keeping the soldiers together in a tight formation, slowly marching forward. Okay, so so here we are, move 23, the f takes e5. Queen d8, d6, okay, knight d7. Okay, I know some of you are greedy and was trying to snatch this rook, but nope. The correct move is just to continue to move the phalanx up. Queen f6. And now he takes, bishop takes, queen takes f2, king here, bishop e2. So now we have some tactics attacking the queen, threatening to come here, right? White plays a nice calm move here, plays rook d2. Now queen e5 is possible. Excuse me, queen d5, just getting on this diagonal and then threatening all kind of discovery checks. However, this move is a little more spectacular. So 28, rook d2. So we see the pin there. And the idea behind this is if bishop takes h5, then rook takes f2. And this is completely winning. So therefore, black played d3 to try to just solidify that. E takes d7. And rook a8 was played, and then queen e8, and the game was over. Okay. Okay, so there's one more example of the phalanx. Pawns just staying together and just humbly marching up the board together. Okay. All right. Actually, let's see. I want to get one. I don't know if I showed one with e4. Actually, I did. I think that was the first one. Yeah, because that was a two knights defense. Let's see. All right. I said that one was the last one. Okay. So, I did say that one was the last one. But, yeah, I was going to show you one more. I get so excited about these. But I think you guys got the point. And, yeah, I was going to show you this game with the Nemzovich defense. Yeah, actually, let's do that. But this is going to be real fast or whatever. I know it's long. I know some... and this is from the black side. So game started out e4, knight c6, and we're going to race through it. This is known as Nemzovich defense. Very flexible defense. Knight c3, 6, d4, bishop, knight e2, d5, e5, h5. And this is where it's good to know your pawn structures. Okay? This is an advantageous pawn structure for black here, because this knight really doesn't belong here on c6 in this position. If you know your French defense, this pawn should be here. Okay? And white's knight probably shouldn't be there either. But it's white that has the advantageous pawn structure in the center. And white and black needs to be able to put pressure on the D pawn, and he can't, because usually you have this played, c5, and then queen b6. The idea, knight here and knight here. Okay? But anyway, let's keep going. I promise to do it fast. So knight f4, g6, bishop e3, takes. And this is all good for white so far. I mean, the unprovoked exchange like that, strengthening, giving up the dark square bishop, all kind of weaknesses around here. Okay, knight a5, bishop d3, knight e7, knight h3. Finally, he gets that in c5, bishop g5, c4, bishop e2. And now it resembles a French a little bit. Knight comes back. Bishop to f6, rook g8, castle. And now we got queen a5. What else? We got rook fd1, king d7, knight g5, rook f8, h3. This is one of those games where white probably should have won, but just lost the thread of the position. Kind of lost his way. King g2, knight g8, and black just held on like just enough, just hung in there, and was able to pull it out. But again, we just trying to show this last example of the phalanx. c8 and rook h1. Queen takes a2. Rook h7. King b8. So finally, you find some king safety here. And right here, it's like, you know, black is pretty much getting crushed. So don't think this is like some type of great opening experiment here. So a5 goes back. Queen b2. Of course, he wants the queen. Bishop g5. Rook f8, and then he goes rook f h7, and we see black starting to unravel here, right? Starting to consolidate the position, and the attack that white had earlier has diminished, and so now all that's left is these pawns on the outside of the board. And that usually what winds up happening when you invest so much time in an attack or something, and it fails. Right? So now the advantage is totally switched. And white hopes that he can stop these pawns. So now you got this 3-1, and the key again is to move them in a phalanx formation, right? Slowly but deliberately, so that they don't become weak. So b6, king g3, knight e7, bishop d1, bishop d7, bishop b4. Little tactics here. Of course, if a takes b4, then the rook is going to drop. Knight c6, bishop d6, king b7. You stay in there, the pawns. c3, b5. Right, he's trying to slow up these pawns, but they're coming. b4. Okay, I made a mistake. I gotta go back because the next move is bishop a4, which means, let's see. Let's go back. Bishop b4. Okay, I know what I did. Knight e7. Okay, so after, I see what I did wrong. Let's go back. Sorry, folks. Okay, so after knight e7, this was what happened. Bishop d1. Okay, now we got it right. Now there's that, what I spoke about before. You can't take because of the situation there with the bishop on b4. Knight c6. checked, king b7. Now 43, I'm looking at these old papers, that's what happens sometimes. c3, b5, rook b1, and now b4. And now bishop a4 was played. Now some of you are saying, hey, why not take right now? Well, if c takes b4, then a takes b4, bishop takes b4, knight here, here, and king c7. And let's say bishop c2. And rook a3 is possible, or g5. I like g5 better. Stopping there. And white still has a good, nice advantage. Excuse me, black has a nice advantage here still with this pass pawn. So he decided to try to just put more pressure on the defender of this square by playing bishop a4. Then he just played b3. Bishop takes, king takes, g5, rook a7. Of course, a4 was totally acceptable. Rook b2. Rook gets behind that pawn. King f4. Bishop c8. Notice how most of the pawns are on white squares. So this bishop is basically rendered ineffective. And it's the same with the other way around. All of white's pawns are on dark squares. So the bishops are kind of ineffective here. So all we have is basically these two pawns right here that's going to make the difference. King g3. Rook here, b4. And somehow I have c takes b4, which means I made a mistake. Oh boy, okay. Let's go back to 45. Bishop a4, and I do have b3 there. So I'm like wondering how. Let's see, b3. Bishop takes c6, king takes g5, right? Rook a7, rook b2, rook b7, king f4, bishop c8, king g3. Oh, okay. Wow, what a move. What a move. Yeah, this is a good game to end the Phalanx situation out. Of course, simple moves like rook h7, are good too to win the game. But here black played rook b4. Okay? Just giving up the rook to free these pawns. C takes, and now he played a4. b5, king takes, and it looks like the pawns are stopped, but fortunately for white, there's that one pawn that's still mobile. And you should know that it's almost impossible in most situations for a rook to stop two passed pawns on a sixth rank. Rook b1, c3. Excuse me, rook b1, king c4. Gotta make sure I make the right moves. No, f4 was played, sorry. King d4, king f2. Now king c4. So now we see this guy is getting involved. King e1. White desperately trying to get the king involved. So again, we have our Phalanx, brothers in arms. Trying to keep the black king out. Okay. E1, King C4, discover check, King F2, B2, F5, sacrifice to try to get one of these guys free. And black just played bishop c6 to cover that queening square, and there's no way to stop these guys. King is going to come here, and he's going to be a queen. So play could continue again. White resigned. Play can continue e7, d3, for instance, rook g1, and just throw just throw something in there. Rook b1, d2. Oops, bishop takes, right? Sacrifice a piece, and c takes, and it's just easy, easy peasy for black to win. Okay, so now that's definitely it. I want to leave the video with this picture right here so you can see all those pawns together. The flanks formation, or phalanx formation rather. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was long, I know. So you don't always gotta watch the whole thing. Once you get the gist of it, you get the point. It's like boom, just move on, pass it on. Um, so I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the phalanx formation. That's how you move pawns. Okay. See you on the next video.